He turned and walked swiftly up the road and disappeared. I forgot to tell him that I like him a lot too, but I think he knows since I let him kiss me. In return for Edward's gift, I copied out these lines from William Tell for Papa to give him when they leave. Whoever looks around with open eyes and trusts in God and his own ready strength can keep himself from danger and distress. Now I will lay down my quill and get to bed, filled with both joy and dread. Thursday, July 31st. Mama, Rosina, and the little ones are asleep downstairs, or perhaps Mama lies awake in her empty bed. Out in the night, the whippoorwill sings his lament. It sounds like come back, but his singing will not bring Papa back, or Edward. I picked up the candlestick and wandered into Papa's studio, so vacant and still. I stepped to his easel and held the light to it. He must have known I would stand here like this, for he had taken down the Orpheus painting and put it in its place, an unfinished self-portrait. Papa looked out at me with a sadness in his eyes that I had noticed lately. Please come back to us, I said to his portrait. Then I returned to my writing table, for I must record this awful day. After breakfast, Papa took his leave of Willie and Lena. Willie, you must be the man of the family while I'm away. Willie stood looking up at him. When are you coming back? As soon as I can, Willie. Be a brave boy and take care of your mother and sisters for me. Will you do that? All right, Willie said, looking so small and solitary. Papa picked him up and held him close for a moment, but Willie began pounding Papa's back with his fists. I don't want you to go. I must, Willie. Then he slumped against Papa's shoulders and began to cry quietly as if he knew he was powerless. Papa set him down and knelt beside the pallet where Lena lay on her back, watching the scene with big eyes. Off, Wienerstein, Klein, Lena. She reached her arms up to Papa. He put his face on her bare tummy and gave her a noisy kiss. Mama was putting food back in the safe, but she turned at the sound. There were more tears in her eyes. Papa went to her, and for a moment they embraced. Then she turned away. Papa's arms felt limp at his sides, and he looked at me as if I could tell him what to do. I'll help you saddle Buckophilius, I said. Papa strode into the living room and unlocked the top drawer of his desk where he keeps his 2 pistols. He stuck the 6-shooter in his belt holster, locked the drawer, and put the key on a high shelf. You know where the key is if you need the other one, he said. Then he took down his rifle from above the door. I'll bring your saddlebags, I said. He nodded. I had to run to catch up as he headed out the barn. Mama will come around, I said. It will be too late, he said, looking straight ahead. What did he mean too late? I wondered but could not ask. When we reached the barn door, I said, Papa, I'm going with you. Don't be foolish, Sophie. Of course you are not going with me. Besides, who would take care of the family? Rosina, I said flatly. He shook his head. You are the strong one, Sophie. I don't want to be the strong one. I want to be a child, and I want you to stay here. I was near tears and flung my arms about him as if I could prevent his leaving. He let me cling for a moment, then quietly he unwrapped my arms. Sophie, I need you to be stronger than you have ever been. I would not leave if I did not think you could be so. But why do you say it will be too late? Aren't you coming back? I plan to, but in time of war nothing is certain. I stared at him, unable to believe that my papa was not sure. Mama knows that. You know that, he went on. Even Willie senses it, but only to you can I say it. Do you think I am Joan of Arc? Papa actually smiled then. If need be, Sophie. I shook my head. I don't think so, Papa. You know what happened to her. This is not Schiller's play, Sophie. This is our own story, and we must be the best that we can be. Always. It's the reason we are here. I stood watching him saddle Buckophilius as if I had lost my senses. I felt numb. He was going, and I could do nothing about it. I could hear horses coming up the road. Are you going to enlist, Papa? Ja. I followed him out of the barn. There they were, Edward and the other men, for I guess Edward is now a man. They sat on their horses waiting. I reached in my pocket and handed Papa the folded poem. Will you give this to Edward? Papa nodded. There was such sadness in his eyes, such pain, that I put my hands over my face. He embraced me. I'll write when I know where they are sending me. Just go then, Papa. I clamped my lips together. He stepped back, gripping me by the shoulders. No matter what happens, Sophie, be strong. Be my brave girl. Remember, fortis fortuna arrivat. Fortune favors the brave. I hugged my arms against my waist and nodded. looking at him through blurry eyes. He smiled. Then he turned and led Buckophilius to the gate. He said something to the men and handed the poem to Edward. Through the blur I saw him tip his hat to me. I wiped the tears away and watched them ride off. Behind our house and over the hill. It seems to me that fortune does not favor the brave, it slays them. Think of Joan, of Hector, even mighty Achilles. All brave, all slain, all but William Tell. Wednesday, August 6th. Last night, lying in bed trying to make my body relax. As soon as I convinced my arms, my legs were tense again, or my jaws, for good reason. All at once Max began barking and rushed to the side gate. I sat bolt upright listening. I heard the dread sound of horses galloping up the hill and saw an eerie light outside. I threw on my robe and hurried to the window. Gott in Himmel, they have torches. Lena was crying now. I put on my shoes, grabbed my journal, and ran downstairs. Light from the torches flickered through the lace curtains. Mamma stood in the doorway of her room holding Lena. Rosina had Willie by the hand. They looked at me, but I could not think what to do, run or stay. Either way, I needed a gun, so I got the key from Papa's desk, unlocked the drawer, and took out the small pistol. The side gate thumped against the post as Max threw himself at it, barking. I pulled the curtain aside and peeped out. The men had dismounted and gathered outside the gate, holding their torches high. If I did not go out, they would set fire to the house. As I started to open the door, there was a shot. Max stopped barking. "Don't go out, Sophie," Mama cried. "They'll shoot you too." "Sophie, nein," Willie screamed. He ran and grabbed me. I opened the door a crack. Max lay on the ground in front of the gate. The men stepped over him and came toward our house. With my heart pounding, I locked the door and told Rosina to carry Willie. "The back door, quick," I whispered and handed my journal to Willie. Hold on to this." I flung open the door, my pistol ready, and we plunged into the kitchen. I led the way down the path by the kitchen garden, through the back gate, and headed for the barn. Pegasus banged against the stall with his hooves and whined. At the barn, I stuck my finger in the chinking and found the key. Unlocking the big doors, I dashed to Peg's stall and opened it. He charged out the barn and stopped short. The gallery was afire now. For a moment we stared. Then I saw one of the men coming from the back of the house. "Follow me, Mama. Rosina, run." We ran up the hill behind the barn, with Peg trotting alongside. Mama stumbled and fell to her knees, but she held Lena safely against her shoulder. Lena, dank dim Himmel, made not a sound. I stuck the pistol in my belt. "I'll carry Willie, Rosina, so you can help hold on to Mama." Rosina helped her up and we ran through the darkness. At the top of the hill we stopped and looked back at the blazing fire. In the blind run to escape, I had not given thought to what we were losing. Now it came roaring over me, even as the flames roared over our house. "Sophie," Mama gasped, "everything is gone." I could not speak. Papa's paintings, Mama's piano, our books, and it was then that I realized Willie was not holding my journal. "Willie, where is my journal? Did you drop it?" "Uh-oh," he said. "Where? In the house or outside?" "I do not know, Sophie." "Rosina, did you see where he dropped it?" She shook her head. I was too scared. My mouth opened, but I kept the words inside. "Careless little boy. All those days, all those thoughts gone." Willie patted my shoulder. "Don't be mad, Sophie. At least Rosina didn't drop me." "Och, what was I thinking?" I kissed his cheek. "Nine, Willie. I am not mad. You are much more important than any book." "I know," he said. "So is Max. Is he all right?" I hesitated. "Willie, Max is dead." "Will he come back?" "Nien. Not ever?" Something wrenched inside me. If only I could tell him that Max is in a happier place now, but I cannot. He is dead, gone. All that is left of him is in our hearts, and that is not good enough for me. Still I said it. "You can always keep him in your heart, Willie." He began to shake his head. That answer was not good enough for him either. "Max is a hero," I went on, my voice thickening. "He saved our lives." Willie put his hand on my cheek and wiped away the tears. "So did you, Sophie." I took his hand in mine and kissed it. For the first time I realized that it was the truth. I had saved our family. My heart swelled, for I knew Papa would be proud. "If your father had kept quiet, this would not have happened," Mama said. "How could he have been so foolish?" I said nothing because I did not know what I thought. Was Papa foolish, or was he brave, or both? "Well," Mama said, "we surely cannot stand here all night. We'll go to Emma's." We made our way down to the creek. Then, with Pegasus following, we walked along the bank until we were below our house. It still blazed. After one long look, I kept my eyes straight ahead. But Willie stared. Suddenly, he pointed towards the house. "Men!" he screamed. My heart jumped into pounding. Silhouetted against the firelight, two men rushed toward us. Elizabeth, Sophie, is that you? Me and Gott. It was Herr Outget and Herr Fulton. Ja, we called. Dank dem Himmel, you were alive. Herr Outget stood, seeming not to know whether it was proper to embrace us. We saw the fire and came as quickly as we could. What a terrible thing, said Herr Fulton. I was unloading supplies and saw the flames. Do you know who did it? I think it was the ones who came before, I said. They shot Max, Willie said. He's dead already. Ach, Willie, Nien, said Herr Outget. I'm sorry. He patted Willie's arm. Come now, you can stay with us. We walked across the creek and up to Main Street. Then Herr Fulton went his way, and we followed Herr Outget to his house. A lamp shone in the window. As soon as he called, Tante opened the door and rushed out. Ach, Elizabeth, you were alive. And me too, said Willie, especially you, Willie, Tante said, giving him a pat on the cheek. Come, the smokehouse is ready. It is not exactly the Minger Hotel, but it's yours as long as you need it. Danke, Emma, Mama said. I don't know what we shall do, her voice wavered. At least I have this. She pulled a small money bag from her robe pocket. Tante Emma embraced her for a moment. I'll put Pegasus in the barn, Herr Outget said. Then Tante picked up a lantern and led us out the back door to the smokehouse. A small windowless log building. Inside lay 5 little sleeping pallets with plump feather pillows. A table held a pitcher, washbowl, towels, and soap. There was even a rocking chair in the corner. I felt a rush of gratitude. After we got the children settled, I lay down on the pallet. Mamma blew out the lantern and darkness enveloped us. If only I could talk to her, but her mind is made up about things, and I did not want to get into an argument, especially with Rosina there. In my mind, I could see the flames burning our house like a giant torch. Oh, if Papa knew, he would hurry home. My throat grew hard and tears rolled out the corner of my eyes down my temples and wet my pillow. I wept silently, letting them flow. First light coming in the open door awakened me. Everyone else was asleep. As I lay thinking about all else that was lost in the fire, I began to wonder if my journal might have survived and decided to go look for it. I slipped into the robe and tiptoed outside. Once away from Alget's place, I put on my shoes and hurried to the crossing. On the other side of the creek, I walked up the slope and around the curve of the road. There I stopped and stared. Our house was a smoking ruin. The log walls were gone, the chimney stood, as did the stone walls of the fachwerk. But there was no roof, and the doors and windows were gaping holes. I stared, walking again as if in a dream or a nightmare. The side gate stood open, and there I saw the body of our Max. I fell to my knees beside him. He lay as if taking a nap, but his eyes were open. The white fur under his neck was caked with blood. Oh, Max, you were so brave. You saved us. I stroked the black spot beside his nose that made it look crooked, and then ran my hand along his shiny black coat. He was cold and stiff. If he were alive, he would fit his head and start licking my fingers, but he was dead, and I had to bury him. I did not want Willie to see him like this. I decided to dig a grave by the gate where he died defending us. First, I needed the garden spade from the tool shed if it still existed. I made my way through the fallen stones around the house. I could see charred pieces of furniture and fallen timber still smoldering. They had done a thorough job. Somewhere in there were the remains of Papa's paintings, of our books, Mama's piano. I shook my head. Papa, this is an awful price to pay for honor. Outside the kitchen doorway, I saw a patch of blue, like a tiny pool of water. My journal. I rushed over, picked it up, and clasped the book to my heart. Truly, it was a miracle. I was meant to keep this journal. The same day, when I returned to Alget's house after burying Max, breakfast was spread on the round table in the living room. The children, 4 Outgets and Willie, had just finished eating and were getting down from their chairs. Frau Merck, Tante's mother, and Rosina were clearing the dishes away. Tante Emma sent the children out to play, but Willie ran to me. Sophie, where did you go? I knelt down. To our house. Look, I found my journal. He gazed at it, then at me. Did you see Max? Max is buried now. I'll tell you about it later, Willie. Everything is going to be all right. Not for Max, Willie said. Willie, if you go play with Ermin and George, I'll take you to see Max's grave this evening and you can decorate it. He nodded, walking out on the gallery and stood alone, watching the other children. After washing my hands in the kitchen, I sat down at the table with the adults. Tante offered me a platter of cheese and sausage. I took some cheese. The sausage I could not face. Sophie, she said, helping herself to the cornbread, I have a skirt and short gown that would fit you. I thanked her and looked at Mama. She had on one of Tante's dresses already. What would we do without friends like you? Mama said and clamped her lips together. In times like these, we Germans must help each other, said Herr Alget, no matter which side we are on. How true, Ernest, said Tante. Both sides are doing terrible things, he went on. The South in the name of the states' right and the North in the name of the Union. Mama covered her face. Shall we talk of other matters, Ernest? Said Tante. We women know very well that what the men are fighting about. We just don't understand why. We ate in silence. I remembered what Papa said. Perhaps we men should listen to you women. In this household it seemed that Herr Outget does so. When we finished breakfast, Tante brought me a blue and white striped skirt and a short gown of blue calico. There are underclothes laid out on my bed for you, she said. Hurry now, I want you to go to Fulton's and see if he has any coffee. Ernst says a wagon of supplies came in. After dressing, I walked along Main Street to the store. Men stood talking on the gallery. Sorry to hear the news, Sophie, said Herr Steves. Ja, Herr Unerman, our militia should have been on alert. I should have blown the horn, but we barely had enough time to escape, I said. Was it the Vigilance Committee? Asked Dr. Pfeiffer. I think so. James Boyd may be a part of that gang, said Herr Steves. Herr Unerman nodded. Ja, I think you're right. We need to run him out of here. Well, he has already run, said Herr Vogel. Left his wife and young children with nothing. She came to our house begging for cornmeal. Said Thomas had gone off to join the Confederates. Dr. Pfeiffer shook his head. These bacon farmers have the same morals as their hogs. I was glad to hear that Thomas had left, but there was no telling where his father might be. If only we could build a wall around Comfort to keep the rebel rabble out. The moment I entered the store, women crowded around me saying, Poor child, and how is your mother? And are the children all right? And how fortunate you were to get out alive. All well-meaning, I know, but I did not want to answer their questions and tell the story again. I just wanted to buy coffee and leave. Then Etta burst through the door like a bolt of lightning. Her red hair seemed to charge with electricity. Listen, Sophie, I'm sorry about your house, but I have a plan and my parents agree. She paused dramatically. You can come and live with us until your family finds something else. We'll be sisters. I've never had a sister or brother. Of course I knew that. The truth is I did not think I could bear her prattling for 24 hours a day, even though a little of it was cheery.